Welcome to another episode of Gateway to Growth, the podcast where we have conversations with the people who make St. Louis work. Our guest today is a local St. Louis legend who is kind of in all the circles. If you are around in events and policymaking circles, you are aware of who Charli is. So it's going to be a fantastic conversation. We talk about what it's like to build a career, build a purpose-driven organization here in St. Louis to benefit the people of St. Louis. So I'd like to welcome our guest, the founder and CEO of We Power, Charli Cooksey.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing fantastic, Charli. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us. So, this conversation, we want to have it be a little bit organic, but we want to really dive into your journey. We like to talk about what it's like to really build a career here, connect in the city, find meaning here and find a purpose-driven career. So I'd love for you to give us a little bit of information just on your background. What's your superhero origin story?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a superhero origin story, but I often describe my journey as navigating the tale of two St. Louis's within a single city. So I was born and raised in North St. Louis City, grew up across the street from Fairground Park. I just turned 39. I lived on the same street, same block, 35 of my now 39 years. And I lived a life of incredible privilege, relatively speaking. And so I woke up and fell asleep on that same block and often became very familiar with the sound of sirens and gunshots. And I also, though, was classically trained in ballet and grew up playing tennis. So I was in very white, affluent parts of town. And I constantly saw how different these two realities were. And I was seeing how normal it was for certain young people to see that resource and access was their everyday experience. And then to come back home and see my neighbors and my classmates normalize struggling to survive. And it was overwhelming for me. And I'm like, does this part of town know that, like, it shouldn't be normal to struggle to survive? And does this part of town know that, like, not everyone has the same resources and privilege that they have? And so ever since I was a little girl, I've been trying to reconcile those two truths and figure out, like, how do I change this reality so that the folks who look like me and live where I live have the same resources as folks on the other side of town. So I've always been trying to chase that dream, and eventually it led me to We Power. But before I got to We Power, I went to a HBCU, a historically Black college outside of Houston called Prairie View. I went there to play tennis, but got really immersed in electoral justice work. So did a lot of advocacy to fight for our students' rights to vote. At the time, Prairie View, the town, was voted, or not voted, but ranked one of the worst places in the country, top 10 worst places in the country for Black people to vote. And there were some very targeted voter suppression efforts all the way up to the state level. At the time, the now governor was the attorney general. And they recognized that when we activated our power to vote, we could control who the sheriff was, who the chief of police was, who the mayor was. You only had to be 18. And so people were freaked out about these young Black folks who are educated and progressive running this county. It was Waller County. And so I was really fired up with other passionate students to make sure that we were able to register to vote, have accessible polling locations, and we were prepared to exercise our right to vote. So fast forward, I was preparing for law school. I just knew that becoming a civil rights attorney was the right path. And then I got a call from a program called Teach for America, and I had a 15-minute conversation with them, I think randomly, as I was maybe like walking from a class to tennis one day. And I said, all right, forget law school. I'm going to become a teacher for 2 years and change the world naively, whatever that meant. And you get to put all the cities down that you want to get placed in for your 2 years of teaching. And I put all the cool cities down: New York, LA, DC. My mom begged me to put St. Louis down, so I put it down as number 10 of 10, just so she would leave me alone. And I knew there was no way they would give me my least choice or least preferred choice. And lo and behold, they placed me here in St. Louis, and I was like, oh my gosh. So came back home, same street, same block, moved back in with my mom. And it was really, really overwhelming. Crime was at an all-time high. I think there was like 9 murders on my grandma's block that summer I returned. Uh, my family was navigating a lot of that violence. I had a cousin who was like shot 4 times on my grandma's street. It was just insane. And so the difference this time was I was a teacher and I was thinking I could change the world one kid at a time, but I realized like, wait, my students live in the same neighborhood as me. They're waking up and falling asleep to these sirens and bullets. They're navigating the same crime. Like, what does it mean for me to be a first year teacher thinking I can change the world? So I took a step back and started to look at the data. And I also had a really cool opportunity to loop with my students, so travel with them from middle school, basically from 6th grade to 7th grade, from 7th grade to 8th grade. So essentially, I could be with them their entire journey before they went to high school. And I looked at the data and saw that even though they were all brilliant and they had hopes of going to college, their high school trajectory, and the data said that only 1 in 25 of them, or I don't remember the day, but it was not looking good. But only a handful of them were statistically going to be able to attend and graduate from college. So that led me to get together with some other teachers, and we started an educational access and leadership development nonprofit. Uh, had a lot of success then. Then Mike Brown was murdered. There was a Ferguson uprising. He was the same age and race as a lot of the scholars we were supporting through that nonprofit. And so that was another inflection point for me. I took a step back and asked, what is my responsibility in this moment? And realized that we can't direct service our way out of racial injustice. We can't direct service our way out of educational inequity. And what I realized is that in St. Louis and beyond St. Louis, we have a power problem, and that we can correlate people's quality of life, a community's quality of life, a certain demographic of people's quality of life to the amount of power they've been able to build and wield. And so that led to the concept for We Power. So that I think I just told a long-winded version of my story, and I also skipped a lot of details.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the cliff notes, but it's also a very powerful story. I think one of the most interesting through lines is that you were always inspired to action and felt that you could galvanize change at a very early age where you're kind of ambitious and young. And I think the most impressive thing about your story is that you actually didn't lose that. A
Yeah.
lot of people go through the corporate space and go through navigating their career, and the bureaucracy starts to kind of pull that fight away from them, and they don't think about how they can actually continue to take action.
Yeah. Well, I think what's been unique about my journey and continues to be unique is I have always been so proximate to inequity and justice, but also so proximate to privilege that I can't, I never get the privilege to forget. And so um, it's just honestly overwhelming every day until I just moved to the South Side a few years ago. And so, like, you can't forget when you go home every night to North St. Louis City, you drive from somewhere like Clayton, and your ride from Clayton to Fairground Park reminds you of like people are struggling. And then we see something like the tornado that happened May 16th, and you drive from my house to my mom's house, and you see the devastation, and you also see like, wait a minute, a lot of these houses look like this before the tornado, and sometimes if you don't know any better, you can't tell which of these buildings are impacted by the tornado or just impacted from disinvestment. And so I think for me, I've always been in a position where I've never been allowed to not be aware of how much people struggle, to not be aware of the fact that people are dying in St. Louis. And so I literally can't go to sleep without having that on my conscience. So I think the work that I do is literally me. Uh, it is my survival work to know that, to be able to run We Power, because I have to know that I'm doing something to reconcile this inequity that people have to live with every day.
I mean, that's a lot to carry, and I like that you've um, I like that you've actually taken what you have to carry and what you have refused to turn a blind eye to, and we wish more people would actually be more engaged with, and you've taken that to say, hey, here's my daily motivation, here's what's going to inform my strategy, here's a problem I see on the way in and the way out of the house.
Hmm.
So here we need to try to tackle that.
Thank you.
So what's been some of the challenges? I think running a nonprofit's never easy, running and being engaged in public policy, especially public policy that wants to have meaningful change, like actually move the needle, change people's economic lives, not give
Hmm.
charity, not have a give away food or something to put a band-aid on something, but really trying to solve systemic problems. That's always a challenge. I'm curious, what's been some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered and how have you addressed those?
um, I think that um, St. Louis has a way of villainizing people and the work that will make St. Louis become its best self. um, and so I think the challenge has been uh, remaining unflinching and remaining committed to what I know needs to be done, even though the amount of pushback and uh, the amount of uh, the the limited resources have felt insurmountable. So um, uh, I mean, one example is just the challenge in fundraising. Candidly, it's really, really, really hard to raise resources at the local level for policy change work, particularly policy change work when it comes to early childhood education. The first organization I ran was direct service, and I mean that was it's like day and night. I could sit down and meet with someone, and as soon as I sat down, they understood the concept and they were ready to write a check immediately. I mean, there were times when people I didn't even know were mailing checks to us just because. And now I sit down, I email people who I've known for years, and I can't even get them to respond or get them to write a check for this work, which is fascinating because what's so amazing about policy change work is you can make a one-time investment into a campaign. For example, right now we're preparing to launch a campaign in the city, and the win could lead to $22 million per year for children and impact thousands of children and families per year, every year forever. And it only requires about a $500,000 investment one time. So you're an entrepreneur coach. That's an unheard of investment. A one time $500,000 investment leads to $22 million per year, every year for eternity,
Yeah, that's
and
exponential.
supports thousands of children and families every year forever. And uh, the normal philanthropic model is you donate thousands of dollars every year forever to support a few hundred young people, and you still don't solve the problem.
You know,
And so that has been a real challenge, is trying to make the case to local philanthropy around the real value of investing in things like policy change. And sometimes it does, candidly, it might take 5 to 10 years to get that policy win. But when you get the win is so transformational and so long lasting that it is worth the weight and the risk of that investment, like entrepreneurship. But actually, the the win and the risk is actually a lot more rewarding. So that's been a challenge. I think the other challenge, back to uh, being villainized, is yeah, I have experienced a lot of misinformation about both me and the organization, and organized attacks about us being anti public schools, about us existing to burn down public schools, to privatize public schools. And it's insane because I am a product of public schools. I served on the school board for public schools. I advocated at a point where governance was stripped from the public school board and there was an appointed board. I was a loud, proud advocate for governance and decision making power to come back to the elected school board. And that misinformation has uh, basically, in many ways, distracted us from our ability to win big change for about 80,000 plus children in the childcare sector. And that's enraging because folks are willing to spread information, and the consequences are 80 to 90,000 children and babies are delayed in getting the resources they need. And I hate to say it, but like babies die when they don't have access to quality childcare. Um, we have childcare providers who are dying because they are putting their bodies on the line without the funding they need, because they're at the front line when things like the pandemic happen, and they are choosing to keep their centers open because they know that parents have to go to work to be able to pay the bills. And so it hurts my heart to know that people are willing to prioritize misinformation when they know that that misinformation delays progress and justice for children and families. And I'm not going to give up, but I know that we could have so much more progress, and St. Louis could be so much better sooner if we were to uh, stop being our own worst enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. I have two small children, and childcare was always the big
It's
question.
expensive.
I mean, it's the most expensive bill. It's like you have 3 or 4 mortgages. However many children you have, each one's a
Yeah.
mortgage. And God forbid you have something like student loans or have
hmm
any personal debt from having to navigate any challenges. Can you talk to us broadly about what you see as the opportunity around the role that early childhood education especially plays in building a sustainable
Yeah.
economic development here?
So there is no such thing as a silver bullet, but early childhood is the closest thing we have to a silver bullet. And I would say a triple, if not quadruple win. Everyone wins when we invest in early childhood. Early childhood is a win for the economy. It's a win for women. It's a win for families. It's a win for children. When we talk about it being a win for children, um, starting at birth, uh, the thing that I joke about is that children don't wake up walking and talking. Like, they need somewhere safe to go, and like K-12 public schools are great. They're free. They're public. They're not all the best they can be, but nonetheless, a family can send their kid to a public school starting in kindergarten. That doesn't exist for childcare. And it's almost impossible unless you have a lot of resources to enroll your kid in a childcare center. And even if you do have a lot of resources, some of the best childcare centers, there's a wait list of 300 to 400 on that wait list.
To get on the wait list when
Exact.
you think about
Yeah.
conceiving, then you say, hey, let's before we think
Yeah.
about having a baby, let's get on a wait list just in
Exactly.
case.
Even when you have a blank check, you have to get on a wait list because there's so few seats. So the win for children is that children have a safe place that is joyful, where they are cared for, and where they are able to learn and be prepared for kindergarten. And kindergarten readiness is so important. And it really dictates a child's trajectory for the rest of their life. So that's when parents are able to return to work, and not have to decide, do I stay at home or do I go back to work? And they can have the peace of mind knowing that their child is somewhere safe. And then when we think about women, 90% of the childcare workforce is made up of women. And it's one of the most, to me, one of the biggest civil rights issues of our lives. 50% of the women who are in the childcare workforce make minimum wage with no benefits. And a lot of these women are working full time, 40 plus hours a week. And in Missouri in particular, um, uh, in one of the most recent years, a lot of these providers went a year without pay because there was a glitch or big discrepancy at the state level with them paying providers. Could you imagine going to work every day for a year straight and not getting paid? No one does that. But women who are making up this workforce care so much about our children that they went to work every day for a year just to make sure that your children, not yet necessarily your children, but our children were safe and had somewhere to go. And that is a sacrifice that women who are making up the childcare workforce make every day. And even when they are getting paid, they're not getting paid enough. They don't have benefits. A lot of them rely on government aid. So that's the benefit to women, is when we invest in childcare equitably, they're able to make living wages, get benefits, and get the resources they deserve for that important career. And then the economic benefits are off the charts. it allows the economy to thrive because people are able to work and not have to choose between whether they go to work or stay at home. And a really interesting stat, there's a demographer, a professor at SLU, Dr. Ness Sandoval, and he has been ringing the alarm recently about the fact that St. Louis, we're experiencing we're the worst region in the country for population decline. I think we're experiencing the fastest population decline in the country. And if we don't do something about it quick, it's dire. And one of the reasons that we are experiencing this significant population decline is because we're building our city for single people. And so a lot of the developments are single units. And the way that we solve it is we build a city for families. And we can build a city for families by being family friendly. We can be family friendly by having things like funding for childcare so that families can afford to send their kids to quality childcare centers. We can be family friendly by building housing for families, not single units. And so one of the ways that we can save our city is investing in childcare, about caring for families. And to me, when we think about making St. Louis the place that it can be, about making St. Louis a thriving place, it all goes back to caring for children and families.
I love that. I want to talk about the place that it can be. I'm curious because you left St. Louis. You were born and raised here, left St. Louis, came back almost by happenstance, but it seems like it was more serendipitous,
Mm-hmm.
and you chose to stay. Not only
Mm-hmm.
chose to stay, you chose to stay and build. So if
Mm-hmm.
you were on the other side of this, which you are working on a part of that arm of attraction and bringing people in and sustaining and growing the city in a real way, what's your pitch? How would you bring people back? Why would you ask them to choose St. Louis?
Yeah. St. Louis is ground zero for transformation. All the things that have not been done are this is the place where you get to accomplish anything. I think this is ground zero for us to like achieve our wildest imaginations. It's the place where, to me, for example, we don't have a basketball team. Like, this is a place where we can attract a basketball team and win championships. This is a place where we have a brand new soccer team where we can make history with soccer. We have a historic baseball team where we can rebuild that legacy, but also like this is an opportunity for us to win not just on the field and the soccer stadium, but beyond that. And when I think about childcare, for example, the research shows that the childcare win we are pursuing could be the biggest win for children and families in the history of the country. And so when I think about what's possible here, and when I say ground zero, the opportunities here are opportunities that are big for St. Louis, but they also can become a blueprint for the rest of our country. And also, another thing that we're working on is something called employee ownership. Um, and that when I say ground zero, I also mean that our challenges are as much our opportunities. So, for example, when we talk about population decline, we can quickly solve population decline again when we invest in families. Like winning this child care funding, that can happen in less than 24 months. Like, these aren't things that will take 25 years. These are solutions that can happen almost overnight and put St. Louis on the map and actually change the lives of people who are here now and attract people to come here like a year from now. But back to something called employee ownership. So we are experiencing the biggest wealth transfer in the history of our country. It's called the Silver Tsunami. We have all these baby boomers that are preparing to retire, and they have a lot of money. Um, and in St. Louis in particular, there's some research that is showing that about 70% of the businesses in our region are owned by baby boomers, and very few of them have succession plans, and they employ about half of the workforce. If we don't do something, these businesses will either close or get sold to these big private equity firms that have no commitment to St. Louis, which is really, really scary. But we can solve this if we come together and do something bold, but actually solutions oriented. And so what we are proposing is employee ownership. And employee ownership basically would allow us to keep these businesses open, keep them thriving and stable and rooted in St. Louis, and built massive wealth. And so that would look like basically financing and helping the employees buy the business from that single founder. And the research shows that uh, employee owners built massive wealth. An example of why this is so high potential, when we think about the racial wealth gap, the median wealth for a Black household is about 1,700. The wealth of an employee owner of color is over $100,000. So one of the things that we also want to do, in addition to winning the historic funding for childcare, is become the employee ownership capital of the country. For context, New York has the largest number of worker-owned businesses, and it's only 100. New York is huge. Like we can we can beat that easily, and so we want to beat that number. But we don't want to just beat it because we're competitive. We want to beat it because one, we think we can, and also because think about if we just tap into 5% of those 70% of businesses in the region. And I don't know, let's say we look at, I'm just making some math up. We look at 100 businesses that have 100, that have 1,000 each workers, and they each become employee owners. And we could really close the racial wealth gap in the next several years. So for us, we can do a lot of transformational things in St. Louis in the next few years, and it would not just make life better here for the folks who are choosing to stay, but it can attract people here. And the cost of living is great, and we have a rich legacy of winning, and we have great sports teams, but we can also bring new things here that can make us even better for all people who call St. Louis home.
I love that. I love that vision around kind of democratizing the workspace, especially with so many successful small family-owned businesses. And
Hmm.
by small, they're not small; they're multi-million-dollar
Right,
entities, and some of them
exactly.
are billion-dollar entities.
Hmm.
But having that transfer not just benefit a few, but benefit all, I think that's an extraordinary vision. But it's also not very far-fetched.
Yeah.
Thinking people work, from my experience, people who have some skin in the game will work that much harder to make that company grow and be successful.
Hmm.
And I mean, imagine having working 10, 12-hour days and actually having something to show for it.
Yeah. They have ownership in the company. But I think all of this and making the pitch, in order for us to make the pitch for people to come to St. Louis and for people to stay in St. Louis, first we have to look at ourselves. And I think the people who have the power um, to do something about making St. Louis what it can be, we haven't been honest with ourselves, and we have to be truth tellers. And if we keep putting band-aids, if we keep putting marketing campaigns out there that are focused on uh, um, not being honest about who we are, we're never going to get to the root causes, and we're just going to, what is it called? Put makeup on a
The
pig?
lipstick on a pig.
Put lipstick on a pig. Like putting lipstick on a pig is not going to be attractive to all these other people who can go to New York, LA, Chicago. Like those people know how to tell the difference between a pig with lipstick on and a place like New York, LA, DC, and Nashville. So like we got to do the hard work, and we got to make tough decisions. And if we make the tough decisions and like suck it up for a few years, we can have some transformational outcomes and reap the rewards in a few years.
Yeah, I think St. Louis has massive potential.
Yeah, we just got to make tough decisions and do what's right.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears for our last question because you are someone who stepped into a leadership position early and often throughout your career, and from direct service to policy to economic empowerment. I'm curious there's a large number of nonprofits in St. Louis and people who want to go into these service oriented or policy oriented, other focused organizations. What advice or guidance would you give either a current executive director or somebody who's trying to get there, either start an organization or jump into an organization to affect change?
Um, yeah, I think integrity is really important. Be clear about why you're doing it, because if you're not clear, it'll be easy to sacrifice your integrity. Because, like I said earlier, when you're trying to do what's right and when you're trying to truly make transformational change, it's going to feel like, and it likely will be, that a lot of forces working against you. Um, so be in it for the right reason, be super clear, or just don't do it.
I love that. Early in my career, I was working with some folks in the nonprofit space, and they would come in energized, but from mostly affluent families,
Mm-hmm.
and I told them first thing, orientation, if you came in here trying to save someone, take that cape off or walk out the door
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know this organization, you don't know this community, and you need to be here to learn before you
Yep.
can serve or before you can save anything. More than likely, you're going to have to learn to work alongside them, and you're never going
Yep.
to actually be that savior. So if that's your complex, you can move out. But if you're willing to do the roll
Absolutely.
up your sleeves and do the work alongside the community, you can make it happen.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, Charli, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the call to action for our community to continue to do the hard work to make St. Louis better and stronger and be the phenomenal city that we know it can be and to be the model for the national change that we want to see.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.